You got some problems that you wanna solve? Then let's chat. That job getting on your nerves, then let's chat. Girl, you know I can relate, so let's chat. Cause I'ma tell you what the bottom line is.
I'ma tell you what the bottom line is. I'ma tell you what the bottom line is. I'ma tell you what the bottom
It's your girl, Cece. I'm your hostess with the mostest.
line is.
I'ma tell you what the bottom line is.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line Is. It's your girl, Cece. And I have my stepmom here, Laura. And we're going to be talking today about traumas and just how to get through them. Because a lot of times we repress these things that happen to us, in our childhood. And we don't realize how much those things really shape the person that we become today. So we're going to just kind of, dig into some things. And this is really my first time having like a down to earth, like really engaging conversation about these things with Laura. So this is a raw conversation. It's going to be good. So, hear us out. Here we go. So tell us a little bit about you.
First of all, Sierra, thank you for having me.
No problem.
I am honored to be here.
Yes. Thank you for coming and saying okay.
Right. Well, of course, my name is Laura. I am a social worker by career for 30 years. So I've worked with many families, individuals, and groups dealing with different issues, different traumas, things of that nature. So that's kind of the gist of what I do.
Okay.
And who I am.
All right, cool. But so you were just telling me before we started recording about like some of the traumas that you experienced. I don't know. So how much do you want to talk about that? Traumas do you want to talk about?
Of course. I'm pretty much an open book.
Okay.
So
and that's a good thing, right?
yeah, I'm pretty much an open book. As you go through life, you go through these changes. So I've gone through a lot of changes in my life, and I'm able to express how I feel now. And I know what I've gone through really is to help other people. And I've learned that through the years that it's not for me, but it's to help other people and for them to be able to be survivors, I guess. To say.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, we all have a purpose, and that's great that you're like able to redirect, some of the different experiences that you have into something more positive. Because I think when people go through things, they just see the negative and they don't see a way out of a situation, which is unfortunate. But it's like once you are blessed to be out of that situation, then it's like, what do you do now? Like spread that positivity to somebody else, help somebody else. Because I feel like, and I was just saying this earlier, that sometimes people go through things and they keep it so silent and they don't share. And, doing that so much can really affect you inside. Like they say, stress affects your body, your gut health and things like that. So I feel like holding on to those traumas, like I've been seeing a lot of videos show up on my feed where like this lady was doing this like special massage and she's like, this is to help get rid of the traumas or something. I forgot what part of the shoulder blade, but I was like, is that a real thing?
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, like, ooh, like, don't get into me. Oh my God. Because it looked painful. And I was like, ooh, wait a minute. But I was like, I feel like maybe somebody needs to go through this. Maybe insurance needs to cover this. Like,
Exactly. Yeah. That sounds like an insurance.
It really needs to. Insurance needs to cover the stuff that we really need.
Exactly.
Without all that work. So, yes. So you were just telling me too, and I didn't know that you were married for 20 years.
Oh, yes. My first husband, I was married for 20 years, met him in college. And, we dated for 8 years before we got married. And so that was, the love of my life,
Right.
However, after 20 years, he actually was diagnosed with cancer, esophageal cancer, with, I'll just say cancer of the esophagus, the throat area. And with that being said, not realizing the things that we do in life, they come back.
Right.
And I'll say to kind of haunt us. So prior to him being diagnosed with cancer, he was an alcoholic for about 10 years. And going through that whole process, it was very traumatic for me.
Yeah, because that was a new experience, new time caregiving, because people don't realize when your spouse is sick, that is a part of caregiving.
It is. So going through that process with him, with the alcoholism, and then him deciding enough was enough and going to rehab for the last time after going maybe 10 times prior. But that last time was like, I'm done with this. So, he stopped. He stopped drinking. He became a model citizen in the community, built his career and all of that. And 2 years later, after he made that decision, he was diagnosed. So after being diagnosed, he kind of went downhill very quickly. He was diagnosed November of 2010. He passed away March of 2011.
Oh, wow. So when he got diagnosed, he had stage 4?
Yes,
okay.
He had stage 4.
Okay.
He was, one day we were sitting at the table and he said, I can't swallow. I'm having a hard time swallowing my throat. And I'm like, we thought it was just a sore throat. And, 2 weeks passed, it got worse. And he went to the doctor, and then they ran tests and they discovered that he had cancer. And at that point, it was stage 4, and it was already in his bones at that point. So during that time, you don't expect that. I was 43, he was 43, we were just getting really our lives back. And then this happened. But going through that, I understand, that whole process and why it happened. He became a saved man. He was already saved going through that whole process 2 years prior, but he was not afraid. And for me to have to go through it, actually taking care of him, bathing, helping him put his clothes on, different things like that, going through the whole process, it made me stronger, because you don't think that when you go through that, something that severe, that you could really do it.
Right.
But it made me stronger. And I think with faith and my prior experiences with taking care of my own mother and an uncle and a father, and they all passed away, it prepared me. And being a nursing assistant many years ago, I think all of those things that I went through, that I was doing those prior years, it prepared me for that.
Yeah, it's like you really don't realize how God is moving in the background and making things, preparing, like you said, preparing things, you know. Like I tell people with my caregiver journey the same thing. I didn't know I was being trained, subconsciously as, younger to do certain things. And, here I am, been doing it for over 10 years now. It's like, wow.
And it's a purpose. You don't know why you're going through this, but you will. You'll know. It's in preparation for something, part of your journey. And I had to kind of look at that too. I'm like, why did I go through all of this in my 20s, in my 30s, in my early 40s? And I can see clearly now. I think I can see clearly now because it's part of your journey. It's part of your purpose. Right. And for me, I see now, I can see clearly now at 55, why all of these things took place. So I'm on another journey now.
Right. Yeah, I was about to say, so what's the outcome?
Yeah, with going through all of that, and I think I shared with you some other traumas that I went through, being molested, I said kidnapped, but just going through being a child of parents who were divorced. That was trauma. And moving to a whole different state, 500 miles away from my father, who I was very close with. And so, all of that, I think, leads up to where I'm at now. And of course, just going through the whole process too of some therapy and support groups, So I went through the whole 9 yards, even though I am a social worker by trade, I
still need other people to vent to as a social worker, even like mental health therapists. They need somebody, because that's a lot of energy from other people coming into you, and it could really weigh you down if you don't have the proper, let's say, upkeep, I guess we'll call it, on your own self, and doing self-care with that energy and things like that too. So
most definitely. So yes, I've been through that too, just finding out who I am. Right. Taking care of yourself, because I didn't. But for me, when I was taking care of these people and going through my family members and going through all of this, I wasn't taking care of myself. And I didn't realize it in the process, because the adrenaline is just everywhere. Yes. You're just constantly taking care of them, taking them to the doctors, doing this and doing that. And you're focusing so much on them. And it's funny because I look back at some of my pictures when I was in my 20s and my 30s, and I looked older. I looked much older, but that was just the wear and tear on that part of my life. And of course I gained a few pounds, but just
happy pounds, all of that. Yes.
Right.
We go through that stage in life.
We do. And I'm coming back, I'm like, okay, I need to get with that. But I look back on that and I just see like how far I've come from, working on myself and working through those traumas. And now having this second, I always say second part of my life, going through that in my 20s and my 30s and my early 40s. And I feel like God has given me a second chance to help other people, to make things right, because going through some of that trauma, and going through that, all of those things, especially with my parents being divorced, I had older brothers and sisters who kind of just resented me and my youngest sister. And we didn't feel a part of that because we were snatched out of that life and moved to another state because of that. So, I'm just now reconnecting with my older brothers and sisters. And I think having to face that has really helped me to heal. And has helped them to heal because they didn't realize really how we were feeling and what we were going through and vice versa. Yeah. So now, just working through that, I think I shared with you, I had started a group back in Charles County where I used to live called My Sister's Pathway to Healing. And I started that. So it's a support group because at that time, back in 2011, when I was going through the death of my first husband, there was really no support. Yeah. Especially for younger widows and widowers. Okay. There was just no support. There was more support for older women or older men.
Yeah, when the expectation of you becoming a widower is like when you like 70 plus years old, not when you're in your 40s or younger sometimes for people.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So there was not a lot of resources where I lived in Charles County, Maryland. So that's why I started the group. And, there were so many people like me that I didn't realize that were going through the same thing just in that Charles County area. So I shared with you, I kind of put that on the shelf when I moved to Baltimore in 2016. And I'm going to pick that back up this year and extend it, not just for people who have lost loved ones, but people who have gone through trauma. It could be men or women, even though it's My Sister's Pathway to Healing, who are going through all types of traumas and just need that support system. So I will be starting that group back this year.
Okay. Well, we'll pause and say, so how can the people reach you to find out when you're going to be relaunching the group and get, up-to-date details about the group? Of course.
I am on Facebook. And you could DM me, Laura Moten Bullock.
All right. Yeah, for sure. And so, going back to like some of the traumas and things that we were talking about, repressing those traumas, and we do that subconsciously. I know recently I've said some things, to my friends, and I'm like, I forgotten all about that, because I repressed it, and talking to the therapist. This is my first time actually like being in therapy for more than 2 sessions, at a time.
Yeah, so I understand.
That. I think too, because I thought of therapy as, you're going through something and it's just like a place event, which it is. I'm not saying that it's not, but in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm not broke. What do I need fixing with, But again, it's an outlet for you to be able to share your inner thoughts and feelings without having that judgment and things like that too. So, like I said, when you're talking about things, I was like, oh, I didn't realize about that. Or, like the therapist in my session last week, she was asking me about growing up and, how my life was at home and things like that. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about these things. And I was just telling you like how I was like the Cinderella in my household.
Yeah.
I had to do all the cleaning and everything. So, because I'm the oldest of three. And and my sisters, and, I'm sure that they have probably a lot more repressed, feelings and things like that, because the way that they grew up in the house is different from when I grew up because of the age gap, and I wanted to touch on, you had mentioned about molestation too. And I think I feel like it's one of those taboo type of things that people don't talk about. And a lot of people go through that. Nobody talks about it. And usually when you go through that, it's usually, and I mean, I'm no therapist, nothing, I'm not licensed. That's my disclaimer. But it's always like a family member too. And it's always somebody around you that you're close to. And I was reading something, here in Maryland, and this girl had been molested, by the, I don't know the backstory because it didn't share that, of course, in the news outlet, but she had been molested for 5 years and the mom didn't even know what was going on. And luckily the girl confided in her brother, who shared with the mom, and the mom immediately acted, because there's some parents, unfortunately, that don't act immediately. They just say, oh, it's okay, and just, I guess, sweep it under the rug, I guess, for, for matters of that. And it's unfortunate. And the way that you, as a child, if you are molested and you share that with another adult, whether it's a parent, and they take no action, it makes you feel like that you're not worthy and that nobody cares about me. I guess I'm supposed to be going through this. And, I think about the show 600-Pound Life or whatever. And so many of them talk about how they were molested. And, I guess they repressed it while it was going on because they felt like they wasn't worthy. And then as they became more of an adult, they continued to feel like they wasn't worthy, and they would cope via food. And, so my point here is, we have all these traumas, but we're not properly educated on how to cope with the situation. And it's you grow up and people are teaching you, well, how to brush your teeth, how to, do this for yourself, and how to go, telling you have to go to school, you have to get a job and things like that. But nobody tells you how to deal when you are faced with negative situations or traumatic situations or situations of rejection or anything like that. So when you went through your molestation situation, how did you feel? I'm assuming you shared it with someone, or?
I actually didn't. Sarah, I did not share with anyone. And I think I was so young, I really didn't realize till I became older what it really was, what it really happened.
Yeah, I got you.
And it's something that happened to a family member when I was older. It triggered that. And that situation that happened, it triggered my situation. And I just thought about what had happened to me. And I'm like, I didn't identify it as that. I was a child. And just allowing, the fondling. And they were teenage friends, females. And they would come over to my grandmother's house, and, we would go in the basement, and they thinking that we're down there just playing, and, so, but they were actually pulling my pants down and fondling. And I didn't realize that. I probably was 6 or 7, maybe. So I think with me, it happened to a family member when I was older, and that triggered. And it, like you said, I just repressed it. I just forgot about it.
Yeah, and I feel like, at that age too, you're thinking, with people that are older, oh, well, you just want to fit in, and if they're doing this, then it must be okay. Things like that. And, again, it's unfortunate. And I think that, we have so many people kids going to daycares. I've heard people say, well, I'm not going to send my child to daycare until they're old enough to tell me what's going on. Or I've had some people say, I'm going to send my child to daycare with a body cam, and I'm like, those are real things. I don't have any kids now, but if I had to send my kids to daycare, I'm not going to lie, I might have to send them with an air tag and a body cam. I'm not even going to lie.
Especially these days. I mean, just imagine, back, when I was growing up in the 70s and stuff, and that stuff was happening. But I just think back then, I think we just didn't say anything. And then it's, you know, and I shouldn't say cultural. It's a cultural thing, but then
but that is the reality.
I think it's a reality that we don't, you know, we don't talk, we don't tell, you know, and especially back in those days, you know.
Yeah, it's like you're sending your children to be around people you trust.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, you hear always on the TV now, they're talking about people in like the Catholic churches, you know, that have gone through that. That's a big thing, and a lawsuit and all that kind of stuff. But if you can't, it's like you can't even send your children to church and to know that they're okay.
Exactly.
You know, you can't send them to another relative's house and know that they're okay nowadays. I mean, it's like, well, where can you send your children? You can't even send your children to school and think that they're safe now.
Right.
And like I had one of my friends, she, you know, homeschools, you know, her children, and I can't blame her, but it also takes a toll on her too, you know, doing that. And, you know, I have, you know, other friends that, you know, they're like, I'm gonna try to keep my child, you know, with me as long as I can. And I was just talking to one of my friends too, that it was a situation I think I saw online where, you know, one of these girls, she had, I forgot how old the child was, but she let one of her best friends like babysit while she did, you know, X, Y, and Z, or went to work. I can't remember what, but that doesn't matter. But, and, you know, I guess, you know, some people don't have the patience sometimes to deal with children too. And, you know, she hurt the child.
Oh, wow.
Like, so the child was, you know, hurt while in her care. You know, that's fighting stuff.
Yeah,
like,
it
that's
really
you're
is.
not gonna hurt my child.
It really is.
You call me if it gets too much. You call me. You just have them sit right there on that porch, and I will be right back there, or I'll have somebody come pick them up ASAP. Don't you touch my child?
Right, exactly.
It's like you have to now really prep your kids before they go anywhere and engage in activities. Like I have one friend, like when her kids go to karate, she's right there. A lot of parents are sitting there watching. You know, they'll prep them like, hey, if somebody touches you here, you need to let me know no matter what they say. Because, you know, when you used to hear things like that, they used to say, well, the predator would say, don't tell your because I might hurt your parents, or, you know, I might hurt you if you do that. You have to really teach your children to understand that. No, nobody's going to hurt you without going through me. You have to let me know immediately.
Exactly.
So
you're absolutely right.
I mean, it's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot, you know, and it's so unfortunate.
Very
you
much
know,
so.
the world that we're living in now and before. I mean, just in general, you know, and it's just the person too. It's just people, you know. You have to be very, very careful, like you said.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we talked about and shared some of the traumas that have been faced, but what are some ways to get through those traumas? Like I know you talked about the support group, but what are some other ways that, you know, when you're going through it and you're just, you know, your head is in the clouds and you're trying to find that how, when, where, what to get through a situation? What some suggestions?
Yeah, I think, and I'll say for me, the therapy for one. And talking to someone that you really can trust.
Right.
Like, you know, I didn't share the molestation with I didn't initially.
Right.
But I did share it with my sister, my younger sister. And she was like, you know, surprised, shocked. I mean, all of those things.
Right.
I hadn't shared it with anybody. You know, I felt like kind of embarrassed in a way. Like it could have been my fault. Even as an adult, I was feeling like, you know, when I was a child.
Right.
So I think finding that safe space to be able, or that person to be able to share that with. And once I did that, I was able to share it with my daughter, you know, because I wanted her to know. I want her to know everything about me because, you know, so I shared it with her, no judgment. And I did share it with my now husband. I shared it with my husband.
And that's important too, because if something happens and you kind of act out of character, and your spouse hasn't seen that side of you, it's like, what's going on? Like, is this a red flag? You know, so it's like, you have to be, but you should be vulnerable with your partner, you know, as well. So, you know, kudos to you for being open and vulnerable and sharing that.
And it wasn't easy because, you know, you don't want to, you know, you feel like you don't want to be judged in any way. But I just know, just working on self. And that's another thing, you know, you have to be able to, you know, just work on yourself and know who you are. And I think that's important because I didn't know who I was. I didn't feel like I was worthy for many years. You know, when you're going through so much, you don't feel like you're worthy of anything. So I think for me, I had to work on myself in order to open up to others. Because if you don't know who you are, if you don't love yourself, you don't feel good about yourself and having that self-care, then you can't really open up to people. You can't really be the person that you're ordained to be.
No, for sure. And you're just kind of stuck in that rut and like, I call it autopilot, you know, and it's no growth. And that's what life is about. Like being able to learn these lessons and grow every day and sharing our experiences, welcoming new experience.
Exactly.
It's all about that, you know? And I think people sometimes lose sight of that too.
Yes.
So,
yes. And then not only being open to family, being open to other people outside of my family, because that was something that I had to work on, you know, being vulnerable, like you said, and, you know, and some of the things that I've shared with people outside of the family, they're really like, you went through all of that, you know, and you're still standing. If you've gone through all of that, then I can do it. So like we, you know, we talked about, you know, what we go through in life is really not for us. You know, I think God wants to see how we're going to cope with those things, lean on him because he's always with us. And it's for somebody else because somebody else is always going to, you know, this is life. People are going to go through different experiences in life, you know, so I've learned that just in my work, going back to my work, you know, some of my life experiences, I'm able to help people even in the work that I do every day. But you got to know when to share and who to share with. And, and
share with everybody.
Can't share with everybody. But, you know, but God, he gives you that open door. And well, you know, say, okay, we'll share with that person. That's not. The person not ready right now. So I'm able to kind of open up to other people outside of my family, which is helping me to really cope, you know, to really work through some of those things. Because when you're working with other people, you know, you're learning from them as well. No, for sure. And just like what you just said about when you did share those experiences with your family and open up and they couldn't believe that, it brings up the point of you cannot, you know, judge a book by its cover. You know, I mean, you know, knowing you, I would not have never guessed that you experienced those type of things. But that's, you know, what has made you the person, like you said, that you are today, to be able to branch out and, you know, help other people and things like that. And that's truly a gift to be able to, I don't want to say like, well, I guess, I'll take that back. So like to internalize the situation that you're going through, but not to sit in it, you know, and dwell in it and things like that. Like, again, it's a 600-pound life, nothing against those individuals or what have you, but, you know, it's sometimes, you know, they do send them to therapy on the show, but sometimes I don't want to say that it could be a little too late, but, you know, they need that extra support from by the people around them because other people are just enablers. And that's what I feel like people need to understand. Yeah, you have a circle of friends, family, or what have you, but sometimes even if they're your family, they don't need to be in that circle of trust because they are enablers, or sometimes they are made to be there to be that negative, you know, perspective. Like, you ever been around people that are just, no matter what you say, they're always going to say something negative about something. Like, nothing positive comes out their mouth ever. Exactly.
And I'm like, what? Like,
that negative energy, I don't want to be around it.
We don't need that here.
Exactly.
No, for sure. Well, you know, to close out, I mean, to just kind of summarize things, what do you want to leave the people with in regards to, you know, traumas and healing and things of that nature?
I just would like to say, just for one, just focus on self. Figure out who you are first and foremost and work on self. Because once you work on self, then you could really support and help other people. Because if you're carrying this trauma around or you're carrying all of these negative thoughts and feelings around, you can't do anything to help anybody else, and you can't even help yourself. So I think for one thing is to focus on yourself and healing, work on healing yourself. And whether that's with therapy, talking with somebody, counseling, it's so many different things you can do. You know what I'm saying? There's so many things that you can do now to really work on self. And I think once you are able to do that And it's continuous.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point to
It's
bring up.
continuous.
It's not just a one day.
It's not a one thing. Yeah. So it's just getting to that point where you feel comfortable
Right.
with sharing, with helping other people, with just exploring. I think you would be okay.
No, for sure. So we'll close out with the bottom line is, we go through things. Everybody goes through things of different magnitudes or what have you, but it's important to not just handle it alone. Talk to somebody, whether it's a professional or within a circle that you trust, because that can affect you over time. If you repress it, it can affect your health. And we are too great of people to allow ourselves to be subjected to that. So thank you so much for watching. We, hope that you all have learned something today. If you have any, comments or thoughts, make sure you put that in here. We'll talk about that kind of stuff on week 4. We might even bring Laura back for another episode. So yes. So thank you all so much. Make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff.